Hi, everyone, and welcome to Geekfest Rants. My name is Carlos Perron, and today we have part 2 of our Celebration 6 retrospective, or coverage if you want to call it. Joining me today, once again, I have Kim, Mike, and Kyle. Say hi, guys.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, guys.
Last time we talked about our first day, and it took us an entire show just to go through our first day. So let's take a look at Friday, the second day of the convention. Not once again, the busiest, because obviously the weekend is when things get a little crazy, especially on Saturday. But as the days progress, it gets a little, hairier and hairier. More people keep showing up, and some of the events, there are a little more high-profile events. So let's begin with the first thing we did that day, which was something Kim and I went to practically even before they opened the main doors. We went to a Ben Burt press conference. They scheduled a number of small press conferences not for everybody, obviously only for media, and luckily for us we had some media passes, but we were able to go in there and listen to the last couple of minutes of a Ben Burt press conference where he was being asked questions about just about anything having to do, with his career, not only as a sound designer for Star Wars films and dozens of other films, but also as an editor. He went from being a sound effects guy to an actual film editor. And he was there also, which we'll hear about at a later point, doing his own panel, on different days and stuff like that. But we were lucky enough to be able to attend this press conference. Now, it was bizarre because it was a very small room and there were only like 10, 15 people there. So it was just bizarre, the fact that we were in that room.
I know. I couldn't believe that there weren't more people there at press conference. And from what I've heard and from what, you were saying, it really wasn't much different at any of the other press conferences. So you would think that there would be a lot more people there between websites, podcasts.
I think it's something that wasn't promoted very well.
It wasn't.
They didn't let people know about it ahead of time too much. We find out almost by accident because we went to the media room just to find out about other stuff. And while we were there, we saw this list. I remember seeing a list of all these different people that were going to be there one a day, and it was Ben Burt, Chris Hardwick, and Warwick Davis. And I was like, wait a minute, this sounds interesting. Some of these people are connected, some of these people are hosting. Hardwick was hosting some of those panels. So, like I said, the first one we went to was Ben Burt, and again, it was very interesting trying to, listening to this guy who's like only 15 feet away from you and just talking, asking him just about anything. And that was a little pre-show fun that we had to have. But let's move on to the actual show. What do you guys remember that was memorable from your Friday experiences?
I stopped by the Star Wars Musical Mayhem with fabulous prizes. It was a contest. It was the music from the movies. And as we all know, John Williams did all the scores. And what they did is they gave you a sheet of paper, and there was 33 cues. What they did, they would play a cue, and they would say, okay, what scene and what movie did that belong to? So if you were sitting and listening to, again, whatever the cue was, you had to match it up on the sheet. And it was 33 choices.
Multiple choice?
It was not multiple choice. So if they had the compactor sequence in Star Wars Episode 4, you would listen to it and go, look down on the list. Okay, there it is, and you just put the track number down. And what they did is they went through all 33. They had some easy ones. It was like the opening song, which everybody knew, and the scroll, the fanfare. Right. So there was like 3 or 4 that were, if you couldn't get those, you were really bad. But afterwards, they said, all 33, whoever got them all right, you went on to the next level. Oh. And the next level, then they started to play the cues for what was Leia's theme.
So how many people made it through the first round?
Oh, I'd probably say about a good 30 or 40 people.
And you started with how many people?
Oh, maybe 100. It was a pretty packed room. Maybe 90, but it's close to 100. There was a lot of people in there.
So only a third made it.
So about a third made it. And then they started with themes. And you listened to it and you were like, oh, that was Leia's theme. And then it was whoever got that right, you continued on. They went to like Jabba's theme. They went to all these themes. And then they were whittling it down, and it got harder and harder as time progressed. They even went into music from the video games.
Oh my God.
I think they did the holiday special just as a gag to see if anybody realized that was the holiday special. And it got down to 2 or 3 people, and they gave out quick prizes. So it was kind of fun to sit and listen to the music and try and figure out what scene it went to. So that was
how far did you get?
I didn't get out of the first round. I'm not very good on the prequels.
And that is surprising, actually, that you didn't do
Really?
that well because you're a big, soundtrack kind of guy and you pick up on these things easy. So it must have been tough.
Tough, and again, yeah, I wasn't good on the prequels, and that's where I lost. I just failed. Prequels, I'm bad. I got to watch them more. Come on, we're watching the episodes 4, 5, and 6, since '77. So,
Don't age me.
but it was fun to do. It was a fun little thing. Cool. And I don't remember what the prizes were, but they did come down to one person who won his grand prize. But it was a fun little contest.
Huh. Well, one of the panels I went to that day was the Hasbro panel. And this is a panel that usually when we go to conventions, I try to make this panel because the Hasbro panel is when they show you what's coming up from Hasbro. And that's basically your action figure, vehicle, playset panel. This is a panel I talked about many times in the past that it's a little difficult of a panel to really get some good stuff out of it because there are so many events every year that Hasbro has to divvy up, their news for the year amongst different events. And an event like this one is very difficult because if you think about it, this year you had San Diego Comic-Con, you had Toy Fair, and you have Celebration. So Hasbro has to divide all of their news amongst those different events. Sometimes they don't go, they might not go to New York Comic Con sometimes. You never know. Sometimes you get some, sometimes you don't get it. But the amount of stuff they showed this time, I would say at least half of the stuff they showed us was stuff that we had already seen during their San Diego Comic Con presentation. The figures, nothing to write home about. It's just basically more figures, repeating the announcement that they're stopping the vintage line. They're not canceling it altogether. They're just putting it on hiatus in terms of they want to now focus on a different line, which is the Build-A-Droid line. This is the line that they had introduced a number of years ago, which is basically you get a figure and it comes with a little piece of a droid and it's supposed to, you get enough of these, you can actually build a new figure out of those little pieces. I mean, to me, that's nothing that interesting. But for completists or focus collectors, that's the type of stuff some people like. It's a little disappointing to see that the vintage line is going away because it's been a pretty successful line for them so far, bringing back that vintage Kenner look for the carding of the figures. But they're going to put that one on the shelf for a while. Maybe they'll come back to it at some point. They did introduce on this particular panel a new wave of vehicles that are going to be at a different price point and a different size. So basically what they're saying is, for people who can't afford or don't want to spend as much money on a $40, $50, $60, $70 vehicle, which is how much some of these high-end vehicles cost, they're going to build them in a smaller scale. You can still fit a figure into them, but the scale, the ratio is completely off. So you'll have smaller size, classical, vehicles that you've seen, cheaper, but a little smaller. And one of the big teases at the end of this presentation, and this is something they've been asked about for a number of years now, I think it is, when are they going to put out a new Slave One? Well, we've seen the Slave One come out a couple of years ago, but it is the Jango Fett Slave One, the blue, silver Slave One. And at the end of the presentation, they showed this little slide of the silhouette of the Slave One, and that's basically the hint that next year we're probably most likely going to see a Boba Fett, classic green, red, the Boba Fett colors, the actual Slave One. So that was the main thing. They're still promoting their fighter pots, which I'm completely not interested in. It's a kiddie toy. It's different. No major accessories I've seen promoted. And overall, a little disappointing, but it's still good to, know what's coming, in our direction. And in a way, whenever I'm disappointed at a Hasbro panel, I'm secretly happy because the less stuff there is that I'm interested in, the less money I got to spend and run around stores trying to find this stuff. So it's good and bad.
And the less you get nagged by me.
Next. What else did you see?
Well, I spent more time, again, at the diorama, the Return to Tatooine diorama. Like I spoke about last time, Amanda and I went, and Kyle, you went too, right?
Yeah, I think I went for that.
We went and we built a bigger house this time. It had a larger bottom and another story on top. And, we did a pretty good job with that one, I think. It was fun to see the diorama taking shape. More and more areas of Tatooine were there. There was a Sarlacc pit. It was really exciting. Again, eventually there should be a time-lapse video on dioramaworkshop.com. I don't know when that's going to be up there, but hopefully soon. And let's see, other than that, what I love doing is going to the writing workshops. at Celebration. They call it Star Wars University, and I went to a Troy Denning lecture about plot. And it was pretty interesting. You know, he writes for the EU, and the thing that I love most about these writing workshops is it confirms that, you know, so many writers have different styles, different approaches to the way they write. You have your very organized writers. You have your writers that fly without an outline. They all have different ways of doing things. And it's nice to hear different opinions and, you know, kind of makes you feel more validated as a writer that there is no one way.
Another one of the, not necessarily a seminar, but one of these ongoing display areas that they had at the convention this time around, which they had before, is the 501st rooms. They had rooms where the 501st cosplayers, they would have on display a lot of their costumes and a lot of their helmets and stuff like that. And, you know, I went into that room a couple times, took pictures, all types of Stormtrooper gear.
The dewback that they had there, they built, that was pretty phenomenal.
Right. And they had also other groups. I think there was a Belgian group that brought with them, like they did last time, they had, and I think it was similar to the last time, they had a Jabba the Hutt, they had a cantina set up. For the first time I saw, you guys probably saw it too, the medical bay with FX7 and 2-1B on either side, and you would go in the middle in the Bacta tank, and you could pose for the Bacta pictures. Those were incredible, how detailed those robots were made.
And they were a lot of fun for photo ops. We had a good time with that. All of us.
A lot of people waiting online for that. Like Mike mentioned last time, you had a speeder bike, a snow speeder. There was an area where they had Ewoks and all kinds of like power droids and Gonk droids and stuff like that. And around the back, for the first time, they had a Rancor. Somewhat of a life-size. You could say it's kind of like a life-size Rancor. It wasn't as tall as in the movie, but the dimensions were very close. Plus, it was hunched down so you can take a picture with him. So that was kind of cool, too.
And don't forget what was behind the Rancor. They had that whole area of cars that were painted, you know, to look, you know, they were painted in some way as a homage to Star Wars. There was that truck with the very back of it had this gorgeous, like, airbrushed, you know, Star Wars picture, a whole bunch of characters. But when you lifted the trunk, you had, you know, a glowing Han Solo and Carbonite that was on the inside hood of the trunk. It was awesome.
Mm-hmm. Let's take a little break now and give you some information on an upcoming event we're going to be participating in. Coming up on October 11th through the 14th, we have New York Comic Con once again. We were there last year with our Geekfest Rants booth, and we are going to be there once again this year, representing our podcast and having fun at the convention. For those of you not very familiar with Comic Con, especially New York Comic Con, they do it every year. It's been at the Jacob Javits Center for a number of years now. And to give you an idea of the type of guests that you will have a chance to meet if you go, you have Adam West, the original Batman from television. The cast of The Walking Dead is going to be there to talk about their new season and some of the new characters who are guests. Not only is Andrew Lincoln going to be there, but some of these new upcoming eagerly awaited characters like Michonne and the Governor, the actors who portray these characters are going to be there, along with Michael Rooker and some other favorites. We have Bill Paxton, genre favorite, one of my personal favorites, from Aliens to True Lies to Titanic. If you're a fan of weird science, Bill Paxton has just about done it all. Christopher Lloyd from Back to the Future will be there, making an appearance like he did on Celebration 6. Ian McDermott will be there to participate in a panel and go and do the autograph rounds like a lot of these guys do. It's a great opportunity not only to listen to some of your favorite stars talk about what shows they're on and what movies they're making, but you also have an opportunity later in the day, on different days sometimes, to get their autograph. You purchase their autographs. It's a great, great way of, you know, getting some good pictures. They're also going to have Jonathan Nolan, one of the creators of Person of Interest, will be there. Peter Davidson, one of the previous Doctor Who's from Lord of the Rings, Sean Astin, Seth Green from Robot Chicken, Terry O'Quinn, better known from Lost, but now part of 666 Park Avenue, Tom Felton from the Harry Potter films and Rise of the Planet of the Apes. And special musical guest, Ben Folds 5 will be performing a concert. One of the things about New York Comic Con that makes it different from some of the other conventions is that they go just about everywhere. It is not a specific genre convention. They hit just about everything you can think of. Television, film, horror, sci-fi, comedy, you name it, they hit it. Just like previous years, there's going to be a gigantic dealer's room where you can find just about any merchandise you can think of. Tons and tons and tons of panels. You could go and listen to either some of these stars talking about their experiences on the entertainment field, but tons of professional entertainment related panels having to do with comic book production, you name it, books, certain TV shows, movies, collecting, you name it. It is just unbelievable the amount of activities that you have. And let us not forget that even though Comic-Cons have grown, just like San Diego Comic-Con, New York Comic-Con has grown beyond its original intended comic themes, there is tons and tons of comic book related material. Stan Lee usually makes an appearance here or there, and most of the major news outlets end up covering the events in one way or the other. So don't forget to join us October 11th through the 14th. That's a Thursday through a Sunday at the Jacob Javits Center in New York City. See you there. Well, another event that I went to that day was a Ralph McQuarrie retrospective tribute that they did. And basically what that was is Dave Filoni came in and introduced, along with another guest, a film, like a small documentary tribute that a lot of the Lucasfilm people did to honor Ralph McQuarrie. And it was very good. It was very well made, and a lot of people talking about his work, not just artists, but all kinds of people that have traveled in and out of ILM. Interesting looking, art in the background, and I'm really glad that I was able to see that. I hope that someday that video makes it to the internet in some shape or form, because it's really well made. And, while I was there, I visited the Ralph McQuarrie booth because they had it again like last time. They were selling stuff, and I was able to pick up both a DVD of an interview that they did with Ralph McQuarrie about 10 years ago. And as far as I can tell, it's one of the best on-camera interviews he's ever given, because the guy was kind of shy and didn't do a lot of publicity or anything like that. But because at the time I think he was starting already to get sick. He started suffering from Parkinson's over 10 years ago. He went on camera and talked about his entire life and, where he came from, how he did everything, how he got involved with Star Wars. And it's kind of sad, too, because you could see that the guy, even 10 years ago, was already shaking, and he had stopped drawing because of the fact that he could not hold the pen anymore, and the shaking would interfere with his drawings. And that's one of the reasons why he wasn't able to participate in Phantom Menace, because the first thing they did when they put Phantom Menace together, they were like, okay, we need Ralph to start drawing for us. And they went to him and he turned them down because he couldn't keep up. He couldn't do it. But he was able to recommend a couple of people, including Doug Chiang, who was the lead artist, conceptual artist in the Phantom Menace. And they used Doug Chiang and a couple of other guys that Ralph liked their work. And it was almost like having Ralph there. These guys were all inspired by him. And in the documentary, they all spoke about how, a lot of these people's interest in drawing and art came from watching, those old conceptual drawings that Ralph made. And that was a very special panel. That was a really good, not necessarily a panel, but a film they were showing. How about you, Mike?
Being a comic book collector, they had a panel on the Marvel Star Wars comics. And they sat back and looked back at the old series that was out there and just went through kind of a retrospective of the stories and the time period that the comics were created, and how a lot of the artists and the writers, they were trying to write stories when there was no Star Wars movie.
Oh, yeah.
So they created a lot of things that didn't make sense when you look back on it.
Jackson.
So. But again, it was interesting to go back and they were talking about how they loved the stories because it was trying to recreate a universe when there was no universe. And just talking about collecting in general. So that was pretty cool.
Now, was this about the actual comic books or also about the news strips, the newspaper strips?
This is only Marvel. It was only the Marvel comics. That's it. Nothing about the new things from Dark Horse. This is strictly Marvel's take on the Star Wars universe. But that was pretty neat. And it actually makes me want to sit down and reread the stories and see what they're talking about. How they were creating things when there was nothing to be created. So
cool.
It was pretty interesting. And then after that, I went and did my autograph hunting and collecting and ended up standing on lines for Warwick Davis for like an hour. Kenny Baker was like 40 minutes.
Oof.
So,
now, how much did those run you?
Those were about, I think, 30.
Well, that's not bad.
$40.
Compared to the other ones,
They
that's
weren't
not
too
bad.
Yeah, against the headliners, yeah, if you wanted.
How's Kenny Baker? Because I remember last time he couldn't attend because I think he fell ill or something. So this was like one of the first times they were able to get him back for a Star Wars related convention.
Yeah, you could tell he's still not doing well.
100%. How old is he? Like in his 80s?
I don't know.
70s?
Maybe 70s?
Wow.
I really don't know, but you could tell. Sitting behind the table in a wheelchair.
Yeah, that's right.
And he said, I thought I saw a hearing aid, but he just takes his time.
Friendly?
And a little bit. It wasn't too bad, but most of the stars, they're more interested. Sign, thank you for coming, and you just move on. But while we were staying online, somebody realized that it was his birthday that day.
Oh, that's right.
So we all sang happy birthday when we got up close enough that he could hear. And when we looked in, we could see his head shaking like, yeah, it's my birthday today. So, and everybody's like, it's his birthday. So we got a chance to wish him a happy birthday.
Cool.
So that was pretty neat.
Well, one of the big events that was happening on Friday is something that when Kyle and I first saw it being advertised as one of the headline events was that they had planned to do a presentation of the premiere episode of Clone Wars, which will not air till later in the fall. So we had to map it out and figure out where it is. Well, the way they broke it down was first they were going to have something called a red carpet event, which we weren't sure exactly what that was going to be. We figured, well, maybe what happens is on your way into the big auditorium, they might have some people there that you can take pictures of or something. But we weren't exactly sure how it worked. So the way that they, like I said, they mapped it out was first there was a red carpet event, which was supposed to be like a half hour or an hour or 45 minutes or something like that. And then you would go into the main auditorium where they would play the last 2 episodes of the previous season of Clone Wars and the first episode of the new season, which is basically an arc, a trilogy of 3 episodes that are connected to each other. These episodes are basically the Darth Maul season finale cliffhanger episodes, so that's the plan. So the way we worked it out was that Kyle already knew that that was the main event he wanted to see that day. So Kyle, why don't you tell us how early you got online and how that worked out?
Well, I went online very early to get there. I was like one of the first people online. I got there like 3 hours before the event.
Right, and now keep in mind that the way they work out the larger rooms is that you have a huge auditorium that sits hundreds of people. And what they do is either next to or on a different floor, they have a staging area, a queue area, basically, where you start lining up. It's like a secondary room, and that's where Kyle went.
Yeah, I went there, and I was sitting online for 3 hours. I had Daddy get me some lunch and some water for waiting, and I was losing my mind.
Kyle wasn't the only person there. I remember when he got there, he was one of the first to get to that queue area.
Yeah.
But, what happens is, and this is something they do all the time, people will hold spaces for other people. So, while I'm going to other events, Kyle is just sitting there waiting, and I'll come by and I drop him off some food, take his spot so he can go to the bathroom because people need to switch off. So Kyle stayed there for, like he said, almost 3 hours, and about an hour before everything started, I joined them in terms of, okay, it's almost an hour to go. I better sit there and basically show my face because I can't just show up at the last minute.
For the last hour, Daddy and Amanda came, and we sat online for the last hour. Then after that hour, they let us in, the people who were lining up, because there was 2 different lines. There's one for the red carpet, that was going to go to the red carpet, and then once you're done with the red carpet, they would let them in first to the premiere. And then there was another line where they had people just for the premiere, not the red carpet, and they would go in after us.
Right, but the way it worked out was that when you first showed up, because you were the first ones there, it was kind of calculated that they would have enough people, number-wise. I think it was something like 150 people or something like that. Right, to get on that first line, because the red carpet area was basically the entrance to the auditorium. So because he was in that first group, he was lucky enough to be able to fit in that area. So the time rolls around and it's time to get there. So what they do is they grab that entire first group of people and they kind of escort them through the front of the auditorium. And we kind of lined up there. I try to get as many of the kids that were around me to go up front because in these things, they had like one of those bank velvet ropes so you can't cross. But in front of us, they also had press. Not real press, podcasters and stuff like that, like us, but people that were important enough to get a closer look or a closer location to where the stars of the show were going to be there walking around talking and being interviewed by the press. So we were there pretty close. We were one level basically behind the press. So in other words, between us and the guests were the press. So we had to kind of snake our way around there. So what happens is I have Amanda, who's kind of short, and Kyle, who's almost my height, and there were other kids, from other people around us. So I try to get as many kids in front as possible because, you don't want all the adults up front and then the kids can't see anything. So we try to get as many kids in front, and the guests start showing up. Now, Kyle, tell us about some of those guests that were at the actual red carpet, not only giving interviews, but some of them were actually signing autographs.
Yeah, they had a lot of people there. They had like almost the whole Clone Wars cast, like from everyone who was ever on the show in general. They were just missing like a few people, but they had him. One you might know, Sam Witwer. He was in The Walking Dead and Battlestar Galactica as Crashdown. He was there. He plays Darth Maul.
He had other voice roles on different seasons, but his big role now is Darth Maul.
Yeah, he also played the brother in season 3. And then Dave Filoni was there. David Collins was there. He was one of the hosts. Ashley Eckstein was there. They also had Cartoon Network was there. They were shooting because I think they're going to show that on TV when the premiere's on TV. D. Bradley Baker, yeah, he's a big voice dude. He's been in like everything.
Lantern.
Matt Lantern was there. He was in 90210.
And they also had some cosplayers and R2 units like running around there. But the way that it worked out was that some of these people, granted, you can go and buy their autographs at the autograph section because they have an autograph area that we're going to talk about later, and we'll tell you how that works out, but which Mike went to. But while we're there, it's kind of like it's called the red carpet event, and it's kind of stylized after when you do a movie premiere you see on TV where you have people, trying to talk to the celebrities while the celebrities are being hounded by the photographers and this and that. So we were able to get close enough to, number one, get Matt Lantern's autograph, Sam Witwer's autograph, which was very special to Kyle, not only because he's a fan of this actor, but he was not doing the autograph area.
And D. Bradley Baker, he's rare to get.
And D. Bradley Baker, who is, like Kyle said, he's a very difficult to get autograph. I've been trying to chase his autograph down for a while now. And it's funny because we were both there with Kyle and Amanda, and I gave them each their own little blank cards and pen. They each got their own autograph from D. Bradley Baker, which is great. And like I said, we came out of this event with 4 autographs. A Sam Witwer, 2 D. Bradley Bakers, and a Matt Lantern. So that event ends, and it's time for the movie, the episodes to start, so they shuffle us into the next room.
Yeah, but before that, they give us like a soda and some popcorn for us to go there. So we go in.
Yeah, that was cool.
And then Dave Filoni says, "Hey guys, how you doing? We're gonna watch the episodes now."
Wow, that's pretty good.
So we're all sitting down. They air the first episode, then they air the second episode.
I just wanted to say, Dave Filoni, you sounded so happy, that he was introducing everything. Anything that guy was a part of, he made so much fun. And even, you would see him walking around at Celebration, and, he always had a wave for people. Amanda waved at him once, and he came right by and gave her a button.
Yeah, right out of the blue. It was bizarre.
Oh, yeah, I read into that. He did that to the kids who waved to him, and basically she's a junior Wolfpack member. So that's what they refer to them
she's a junior Wolfpack member.
Yeah,
Okay.
they call them the pups.
But he's a lot of fun. He's so much fun to listen to.
And they also had all these stars from the show that were there at the red carpet event, and maybe a few more.
They would all sit in the front.
Right,
yeah.
They brought them up front with Dave Filoni, and we watched those 2 episodes, and then we were watching the actual episode.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well, we were finally watching the actual episode, but right before that, they brought the cast up on stage, and then they did like a quick 2-minute interview, and the cast said they haven't seen the episode yet, so they're going to see it now. So then we watched the episode. It was fantastic. Great effects, everything. And then after that, they bring Sam Witwer up because this is like his second celebration. He was at Celebration 4, but he was only there for a little bit. He couldn't make the last one.
The other thing that was interesting about this particular presentation was that they gave us, I believe, the date, the premiere date. Not only the date, but the change of date to the Clone Wars. No
Saturday
longer,
mornings,
right?
9:30.
No longer is it on Fridays. They're moving it to Saturdays. At what time?
9:30 starts September 29th.
9:30 a.m. on Saturday morning, so it's becoming basically a Saturday morning show now, which, hey, I don't care when they put it as long as they keep playing it. And they talked about the fact that they're working on season 5, they're working on season 6, so we'll see where this goes. Originally the show was supposed to be 5 seasons, so I know that they've already gone beyond what their original plan was, so anything we get now after this season is gravy as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it already looks really good.
Well, that was basically it for the highlight of that day as far as we're concerned, in terms of that was a big event. I don't know if you could say it was as big as the George Lucas, Jon Stewart interview that they did on the previous time, but as far as we were concerned, that was one we definitely wanted to make. I was afraid I wasn't going to be able to make it because I didn't want to stand in line so long, but thanks to Kyle, we were able to get in there one way or the other, and then get Amanda to go too. Well, that brings us to the end of part 2 of our Celebration 6 coverage. Please join us again next time. I'd like to thank Kyle, Kim, and Mike for reminding us of all these great stories we had a couple of weeks ago. And we will see you here hopefully next week where we will continue with some of this information or some other kind of show here at Geekfest Rants. Bye-bye, everybody.
Stop.